Right after we lowered my wife into the ground, I saw my daughter's best friend looking at me like I was the one who died. Not with pity, not with grief, but with something else entirely. Something I wish I'd never recognized, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a word. It was just a look. But that look, it rattled me more than the coffin, more than the priest's final prayer, more than standing there with my daughter's hand shaking in mine, pretending I could hold us together. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt someone cross a line without touching you or saying a word? Just a shift in the air, a moment too long, a stare too deep? Comment yes or no below. I'm reading every single one. And if this already pulls something out of you, don't scroll past it. Like the video. Subscribe, because this one is gonna stay with you. Now let me tell you what happened. Her name was Macy Tucker, and I used to think I was the lucky one. She wasn't flashy. She didn't take up space in the room like a storm. She was the kind of person who made everyone else feel a little more grounded just by standing next to them. We met at a volunteer event. I was there by accident, literally. I took a wrong turn and ended up helping hand out sandwiches to flood victims. She was handing out blankets and quietly calling the shots without making it look like she was in charge. I remember thinking, she's not like anyone I've ever met. And I was right. Macy was strong in that rare, unshakable way. Not loud strong, quiet strong. She was the one people leaned on, including me. She never liked attention. Even on her birthday, she'd wave it off with a just dinner at home request. But she'd plan my birthdays like they were national holidays. We were married for 20 years. And no, it wasn't perfect. We fought about money. We got lost in work and parenting. But we laughed. We had rituals. And we never stopped choosing each other. Every Sunday morning, we made pancakes together. Even if the rest of the week was chaos, Sunday was ours. Until it wasn't. Macy died on a Sunday morning. Cancer. The kind that doesn't give you time to be brave. One minute she was laughing because I burned the pancakes. The next minute she was staring past me, whispering my name like she was already halfway gone. I tried to fight for her. Hospitals, treatments, second opinions. But in the end, grief doesn't ask for your permission. It just moves in and unpacks its bags. I barely remember the funeral. Just flashes. The smell of lilies. The sound of Ariella crying so quietly I thought it might kill me. And Rowan. He stood near the back. Didn't say much. Didn't do much. But he looked at me like he knew something I didn't. Rowan has been Ariella's best friend since freshman year. He was over for dinner more times than I can count. He called Macy Mama Tuck. He hugged her like family. And after she died, I didn't think twice when he started showing up more. Bringing Ariella milkshakes. Helping out around the house. Fixing the porch light I'd been meaning to get to for months. I thought, good kid. I thought, this is what Macy would have wanted. Someone looking after our girl. But sometimes people who look like comfort are really just wearing masks. And sometimes, grief makes you miss the masks slipping. There was this one moment at the funeral. It plays in my mind like a stuck song I can't shut off. Everyone was leaving. Ariella had gone ahead to the car. I stood there, still, watching the dirt settle over my wife's casket like maybe if I looked long enough it would all make sense. Then I felt a presence behind me. Not a word, just a shadow. I turned. It was Rowan, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. He stepped forward and gave me a hug. We'd hugged before, dozens of times, but this wasn't that kind of hug. This one lingered. And when he pulled me eye and just didn't say a word. But I swear to you, he wanted to. Like he had something pressed against his teeth but couldn't bear to let it out. I didn't say anything either, because my mouth was too full of confusion. But that look, that moment, it planted something inside me, a seed, a suspicion, a silence I couldn't unhear. I drove home that day with a funeral program still shaking in my hands. But I wasn't shaking for Macy anymore. I was shaking because I'd just seen something I couldn't name yet. Something in Rowan's face. In the way he looked at me. In the way Ariella avoided my eyes when I asked how she was holding up. I thought grief was the end of everything. But it turns out, it was just the beginning of a different kind of betrayal. And I wasn't ready. Not even close. You ever build something so slowly, so deliberately, that you don't even realize it's beautiful until it's already gone? That was Macy and me. Ours wasn't the kind of love people write books about. It didn't explode. It didn't dazzle. It grew. It grew in burnt toast and inside jokes, in quiet mornings and shared toothbrush drawers, in arguments that never needed yelling, in kisses that never needed grand gestures. She had this way of folding laundry like it was sacred, like turning socks inside out was an act of worship. And every time she brought me a mug of tea, she'd say, "Try not to spill it this time, Captain Clumsy." I'd roll my eyes, she'd smirk. That was our rhythm. Not perfect, not glamorous, but it was ours. We met in our late 20s, two people who'd already been disappointed, just enough to be grateful when something soft finally showed up. She was working at a local bookstore. I was buying a journal I'd never end up using. She saw me hesitate between two covers and said, "Pick the blue one. Red looks like it's trying too hard." I laughed. She didn't. She just went back to stacking copies of The Alchemist like nothing happened. I walked out of that store thinking, well, I'll be back. And I was. Twice a week. For 3 months. We got married a year later in a tiny garden with string lights and a broken speaker that kept skipping during our first dance. She said it was the universe telling us not to take ourselves too seriously. I still remember her vows. She said, "I don't promise to be perfect. I promise to be present." God, I loved her. Ariella came 6 years later. 6 long years of trying. Of hope and heartbreak. And too many nights crying into each other's shoulders when another test came back negative. When Macy finally got pregnant, she laughed through her tears and said, "Guess we weren't broken. Just delayed." And when Ariella arrived, this tiny 5-pound 9-aught storm of lungs and light, Macy looked at her like she was the final puzzle piece. She was our miracle. Our only. Our everything. Macy poured herself into motherhood with the same quiet devotion she gave everything else. Baby books, night feeds, singing Sweet Baby James off-key in the middle of the night. I watched her become someone else, not in a bad way, just more layered, more tired, more stretched thin. And somewhere along the line I stopped seeing the strain. Maybe I didn't want to. Maybe she didn't let me. But now, looking back, I see the cracks forming long before her body gave out. The diagnosis came like a punch you never saw coming. One minute she was joking about her stiff joints, the next she was scheduling scans. By the time they found it, it was stage 4. The doctor said, aggressive. I heard clock. Everything after that was hospital rooms and pill bottles and hours spent Googling words I couldn't pronounce. Macy handled it better than I did. She made lists, I made promises. She faced the end with grace. I tried to outrun it. Her last week at home, she made me pancakes. She could barely stand, but she insisted. And between bites, she said, "Promise me you won't lose her, not the way I lost myself." I didn't ask what she meant, because I didn't want to know. But those words, they carved themselves into my bones. Ariella broke after Macy died. Not loudly, not dramatically. She just disappeared in plain sight. Her laughter turned brittle. Her eyes, once so curious, got heavy, like they'd seen too much too soon. And Rowan stepped in like a shadow. He'd always been around. Since middle school, just a lanky kid with a skateboard and too much hair in his eyes. But during Macy's illness, he practically moved in. He brought Ariella soup when she was too tired to eat. He sat with her through every treatment visit. I remember thinking, at least she's still laughing with someone. And God, I clung to that. Because when you're watching the person you love die slowly, you take any sign of life you can find. Even if it doesn't make sense. Even if it hurts. But laughter can hide things. Things you don't want to see. And sometimes, it hides things you're not ready to see. I wasn't. Not yet. But the version of us I buried with Macy, that was the version that trusted people blindly, that didn't question comfort, that believed love was enough to make people good. I didn't know it then, but I was about to find out that even grief has shadows, and not all of them come from the person you lost. Grief is quiet. People think it's loud, crying, screaming, slamming your fists on God's front porch. But that's not the kind of grief that lingers. The grief that stays, it's the one that makes everything silent. The fridge hums. The clocks tick too loud. Even laughter, if it comes, sounds like it doesn't belong anymore. That's what our house felt like after the funeral. Still. Suspended. Like we were underwater, pretending we could still breathe. Ariella stopped sleeping in her room. Said the walls made her feel watched. She started crashing on the couch. wrapped in a quilt Macy had sewn when she was pregnant, frayed edges and all. I didn't ask questions, didn't push. I was too afraid the answers might hurt more than the silence. Then came Rowan. Again. And again. At first I didn't think much of it. He brought Ariella her favorite smoothie from that overpriced shop downtown, fixed the wobbly chair in the dining room without being asked, told me he just wanted to check in. I said thank you. He said, anytime. And he meant it. Because he started coming by all the time. Now I'm not stupid. I know what people say, how it's good for someone her age to have support, someone to talk to. But there's a difference between comfort and attachment, between friendship and possession. And I didn't know where the line was yet, but I knew it had been crossed. It started in the small things. The way his hand would rest on her lower back when he leaned past her in the kitchen. The way they spoke in hushed tones behind closed doors, like secrets were just normal now. The way Ariella would go silent whenever I walked into the room mid-conversation. Once I caught her smiling at a text on her phone, and when I asked what was funny, she said, nothing. But the way she held the screen away from me? That wasn't nothing. One night I was up late. Couldn't sleep. Grief does that to you, makes your brain chew through memories like they're bones with no meat left. I was sitting in the kitchen, drinking cold tea, when I heard it. A door. Soft. Careful, like whoever was shutting it didn't want to be heard. It was 2:04 a.m. I froze. You know that feeling when your gut knows something your heart can't handle yet? Yeah, that. I stood there in the dark for a long time, listening, hoping it was just the wind or the house settling. But this house didn't settle like that. The next morning, I made eggs and waited. Ariella walked in, hoodie hanging off one shoulder, dark circles under her eyes. Didn't sleep well, she mumbled. And that was it. No good morning. No smile, just a lie dressed in sleepy clothes. I nodded, didn't press, didn't accuse. Because sometimes when the people you love lie to you, you pretend not to notice. But deep down, you start building a case, piece by piece, moment by moment, until the picture gets too loud to ignore. Grief messes with your instincts. It makes you question what you see. But it also sharpens you, like a knife that's been in the fire too long. You start watching more closely. Listening for things you never used to notice, reading between silences, and that's when it happened. I was folding laundry, something I hadn't done in years, if I'm honest. Macy always insisted on doing it her way. I picked up Ariella's hoodie, the one she'd worn the night I heard the door, and something fell out of the pocket. A folded piece of paper. Nothing fancy, just a crumpled note, ink smudged like someone had held it in sweaty hands too long. I didn't want to open it. My fingers trembled like they already knew, like whatever was written on that paper had weight, heat. But I unfolded it anyway, because pretending not to know doesn't keep the truth away. It was written in Rowan's handwriting. I knew it because I'd seen it 100 times on our fridge. Thank you notes, grocery lists, birthday doodles for Ariella. It said, I know we said we'd wait, but it's getting harder not to touch you. I'm scared of what your dad will do if he finds out. But I'd rather lose his respect than lose you. I read it twice, then a third time, and I sat there in the laundry room, surrounded by my daughter's clothes and Macy's old robe and a silence so thick I could barely breathe. He didn't call her Ari, he didn't even say her name, but I knew. I knew. And in that moment, I felt something crack inside me. Not rage, not yet. Just the soft, sick sound of something sacred being undone. Because when you read something like that, when the boundaries between grief and betrayal start to blur, you realize you're not just mourning the dead anymore. You're mourning trust. You're mourning the version of your child you thought you still knew. And I told myself maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was old. Maybe I was wrong. Until I found the second one. The first note nearly folded me in half. I sat there in that laundry room with Rowan's words seared into my eyes, trying to convince myself I'd misread them, that this wasn't what it looked like, that the lines weren't crossed, they were just blurred. But there's no room for maybes in betrayal. It either happened or it didn't, and this was a confession dressed up like a secret. I know it's wrong, but nothing else makes me feel alive. You do. He didn't just write that to a girl. He wrote it to my daughter. And worse, he meant it. I sat in that silence for a long time, not moving, not crying, just sinking. because the weight of what I'd found didn't feel like shock. It felt like a shift, like the earth beneath me had tilted just enough to make me question every step I'd taken the last few months. And suddenly, I wasn't grieving a wife anymore. I was watching my daughter become someone I didn't recognize. Ariella, my girl, my curious, bookish, big-hearted miracle. She used to fall asleep with a flashlight under her covers and a stack of novels on the floor. She once cried for a week when her hamster died. She used to hold Macy's hand even at 13, even in public. Now she barely looked at me. Now her smile came in pieces. And now she was the reason Rowan was writing things that made me feel like I couldn't breathe. I kept hearing Macy in my head, that night at the kitchen table, her voice barely above a whisper. Promise me you won't lose her, not the way I lost myself. And here I was, staring at the first crack in the dam, wondering if I'd already failed her. How do you protect your child when the thing they think they want is the very thing tearing them away from you? I didn't confront her. I didn't rage, didn't scream, didn't slam the note on the table and demand answers. I just folded it up, carefully, as if it was made of glass. I tucked it in the back of my wallet. And I told myself I needed more than suspicion, more than one note, more than a broken heart and a bad feeling. Because there's something they don't tell you about being a parent. They don't tell you how many times you'll have to swallow your fear to protect your child's story. How many times you'll have to act calm while your insides are in full collapse. How often you'll sit with something unbearable just so they don't break in front of you. I wanted to yell. I wanted to find Rowan and make sure he never came near her again. But I kept hearing Macy. And more than anything, more than anger, more than shame, I was scared. Because if I lost Ariella in this moment, I might not get another chance. So I didn't say a word. I watched. I listened. I waited. I hugged her a little tighter when she came home. I made her favorite pasta even though I wasn't hungry. I told her I was proud of her for getting through the week, even though every smile on her face now felt like it belonged to someone else. I was trying to love her through it, even though I didn't know what it was yet. And then, the second note. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't folded like a secret. It was sitting in the drawer by the phone, Macy's drawer. The one we used to call the everything drawer because it held coupons, old pens, expired batteries, and stray keys we'd long forgotten the use for. I was looking for scissors. What I found instead was an envelope. My name was on it. Just my name. Not Dad, not Alaric, just a first name. Written in handwriting that made my heart squeeze the moment I saw it. Rowan's. I stared at that envelope like it had teeth. Like opening it would mean losing something I hadn't even figured out how to hold yet. I didn't open it right away. I turned it over in my hand a few times. Checked for a date. There wasn't one. It was sealed. Neat. Intentional. And suddenly I realized something even worse. This note wasn't meant for my daughter. It was meant for me. And in that moment, I knew whatever was inside that letter wasn't going to break me. It was going to change me. Forever. The letter shook in my hand like it already knew what it contained. It wasn't long, barely a few lines, but every word had the weight of a world I never wanted to live in. I know what you think you saw. I swear I love her. I never meant to betray you, but I think I've loved her since she was 15. And I know that's wrong. I know, but I couldn't stop. I read it once. Then again. And with each pass, it didn't get easier. It got worse, because this wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't grief clinging to comfort. This was a decision. A premeditated feeling he'd nurtured like a secret garden. And the worst part? He knew it was wrong. And he chose it anyway. I stood in the kitchen, staring out the window like answers might be hiding in the trees. I could hear Ariella's laugh from the living room. A real one. Not forced, not hollow. The kind of laugh Macy used to call from her gut. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't grieving Macy anymore. I was grieving fatherhood. Not the role, not the title, but the belief that I could protect her. That I was the one safe thing in her world. Turns out, I wasn't even close. You think betrayal only hurts in marriage, that it's a contract broken between adults. But when someone you trusted, someone who sat at your dinner table, who toasted your wife's birthday, who called you family, when that person lays their feelings across your child like a confession, it doesn't just hurt, it breaks something primal. It scrapes across the bones of everything you believe about yourself as a father, as a man, as a protector. And suddenly, you don't know who you're angry at more, him, your daughter, or yourself. I didn't explode. That's what people expect in stories like these, right? Some big, thunderous rage. Throw a chair. Punch a wall. Scream until your voice cracks. But I didn't do any of that. I just went quiet. Because sometimes silence is scarier than shouting. Sometimes the pain is so sharp, you go completely still. Like your body knows it can't afford to tremble or it'll shatter. Ariella walked into the kitchen later that night, humming something under her breath, scrolling on her phone like we weren't living in two different dimensions. She smiled, asked if we had any popcorn left. I said, second cabinet. And she said, thanks, Dad, like she was still my little girl. But my ears were still ringing with Rowan's voice, even though it was written on paper. I think I've loved her since she was 15. 15. That's the age she got her braces off. The year she dyed her hair blue for 3 days just to prove she could. The same year I remember Rowan joking about her finally growing up. And now that joke doesn't feel funny. It feels rotten. Like something I should have paid more attention to. I kept the letter. Tucked it into the old cigar box in my nightstand, under a stack of Macy's birthday cards. And I didn't sleep that night. I just laid there staring at the ceiling, remembering every sleepover, every game night, every car ride they shared that I never questioned. All the times I said, Rowan's a good kid. Rowan's family. She's safe with Rowan. God, how many lies wear the face of love? The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror and realized I couldn't unknow this. I couldn't let it fester, couldn't bury it like another grief. And I sure as hell couldn't look at Rowan again without saying what needed to be said. So I did what any man does when he feels powerless. I confronted the boy. Some conversations don't need to happen in the heat, they need to happen in the quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear a heartbeat skip. Where no one's yelling, because the words alone are heavy enough to split the air. That's how I planned it. No dramatic showdown, no calls or texts or slamming doors, just a calm invitation. Hey Rowan, mind helping me fix the screen door this weekend? Been meaning to get to it. He replied in seconds. Of course. Anything you need. Funny how quick people are to help when they don't know they're walking into a reckoning. He showed up at 10 a.m., toolbox in hand, hoodie half-zipped, nervous energy under a practiced smile. I let him in, offered him tea. We sat at the dining table, same one where he'd blown out candles next to Ariella on her birthdays. Same one where Macy once spilled orange juice all over his school project and he said, "It looks better now." I remember thinking, he's a good kid. I hate how often I thought that. The tea steamed between us. I didn't touch mine. He kept glancing at his like it might save him. And after a long silence, the kind you can only sit through when you already know the answer, I asked it, "How long have you been in love with my daughter?" He froze. Didn't blink, didn't swallow. Just sat there, caught in the full weight of the question. Then the slow crumble began. His lips parted like he was about to lie, then closed again. He looked down. "It's not what you think," he whispered. I said nothing. "She came to me," he added a little louder. "After Macy passed, she was lost. I was just there. I didn't plan this." I still didn't speak. "I didn't want it to happen," he said, "but it just did." One night turned into talking. Talking turned into, God, I don't know. I didn't touch her at first. I swear, she kissed me. I finally said something, but only to myself. Every man thinks weakness is romance when it flatters his ego. Because that's what this was. It wasn't love. It was validation. She was broken, and he saw a chance to matter. And instead of stepping away, he leaned in. He kept talking. "I didn't want to lie. I thought you'd hate me. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't expect to fall for her." But somewhere in that noise I heard the truth. He didn't think he'd get caught. He thought grief was a permission slip. And maybe the most dangerous thing of all, he thought intentions were stronger than consequences. Then he looked up, eyes shiny, lip trembling, and said, "Please. Don't tell her I told you. She'll hate me. She doesn't know I wrote that note." Ah, there it was, the plea. Not for forgiveness, not for understanding, but for protection. For silence. I didn't say yes, I didn't say no. I just stood up, walked to the door, opened it. Then I looked back at him, This boy I used to cheer for at school plays. This boy who once called me Pops when he thought it'd make me laugh. And I said, "Get out of my house." No yelling, no speech, no threats, just truth. Plain and sharp. And this time, when the door closed behind him, I heard it slam. Not because he slammed it, because I finally let it close. I didn't tell Ariella right away. I thought maybe I could protect her from it. Maybe if I stayed calm, if I let the whole thing blow over, I wouldn't have to break what little was left between us. But the thing about the truth is, it doesn't need your permission to be felt. It just shows up. And it did. She found the note. I don't know how. Maybe it slipped from my wallet. Maybe she went looking. But one night I walked into the kitchen and there she was. Letter in hand, face red, breath shallow. Her voice didn't crack, it snapped. "Did you read this?" I said yes. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She just folded the note, slid it into her pocket, and said, "You don't get it. You don't know what it's like to be 18 and grieving and lonely." And I swear, for a second, I felt small. Because she was right. I don't know what it's like to be her. To lose a mother and feel invisible in your own skin. To reach for someone who felt present when the rest of the world kept walking past. But I do know what it's like to be 47. And to watch your daughter become someone's secret. "I didn't raise you to hide," I told her. "I didn't raise you to be comfort for a man who should have known better." She flinched. But not from guilt, from shame. And I hated myself for putting that in her eyes. We didn't talk for 3 days, then 3 more, then a week. The silence stretched long, too long. She stopped coming home some nights. When she did, she stayed in her room, headphones on, door shut. I left meals outside her door. Sometimes she ate them. Sometimes she didn't. I went to therapy, alone. I told a stranger with kind eyes that I didn't know how to hold grief and love in the same hand without dropping one of them. She said something I'll never forget. Sometimes, parenting through heartbreak means standing in the doorway, not kicking it open, not walking away, just being there. And then, Macy. She came back to me in a way I never expected. I was digging through old coats, looking for that navy jacket I always wore on rainy days. Found it in the back of the closet, put my hand in the pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Yellowed, soft at the edges. Her handwriting. My name on the outside. Not Alaric, not Babe. Just for when you feel lost. Inside, her words. "If you're reading this, I'm already gone. Don't protect her from pain, just don't disappear from it. She needs to know you see her, even when you don't understand her." I stood in the hallway and let that wash over me. All the therapy in the world, and somehow Macy still said it best. I wasn't supposed to save Ariella from her mistakes. I was supposed to stay. So I did. I started small. Tea in the evening, a knock on her door instead of a lecture. I'd say, "Just checking in, no pressure." She'd nod, maybe offer a tired smile, sometimes nothing. But I kept showing up, again and again, until one night she opened her door and sat beside me on the couch. No words, just presence. I didn't reach for her hand, but I left mine open and she took it. Not because she needed protection, but because she finally knew I still saw her. Not as my broken daughter, but as my daughter, still. Now the house is quieter than before, but not empty. Ariella's moved out. College, independence, growth. We talk now, not like we used to. Better in some ways. Fewer masks, more pauses, more truth. Rowan gone, no contact, no mention. And honestly, forgotten. Not in a petty way, just buried. With the version of Macy I lost. With the version of myself I had to leave behind. I sit on the porch some nights. Same tea, same cup, same chair Macy used to curl up in. And I think about everything I buried that year. A wife, a belief, an illusion. But not my daughter. I didn't lose her. I stayed long enough to love this version of her. The one with sharper edges. The one I never expected. But the one who still needed me, even when she didn't know how to say it. I lost a wife. I lost my illusions. But I found the courage to stay in love with the version of my daughter that still needed me. And maybe that's enough.